So I've got to give it to myself. I kind of nailed it on the Leica SL3 versus Sony a7R5 preview video. So here's the deal. In my preview video on this topic, I said I was interested in testing out the statements that Leica engineers made in certain videos talking about the SL3. They said that basically full frame image quality has reached an apex, and that now the differentiator for their cameras, and really any full frame camera, is going to be user experience, joy of use, ease of use, those kinds of factors. So what I did is I took my SL3 and put two different Sigma DGDN art contemporary lenses, the 24mm and the 90mm. And then I rented the Sony a7R5 and put those same Sigma DGDN contemporary lenses, the 24mm and 90mm, on this body. Both cameras have 61 megapixel sensors, and both cameras are sort of the flagship of each manufacturer's full-frame line. So, to cut to the chase and keep this video short, the Leica engineers were pretty much right. In terms of photography, the cameras put out very similar results with these same lenses attached to the front of them. I would say that Leica colors and sort of the toning of highlight and shadows is better. Clearly, Leica spent much more time refining that image, whereas the Sony one feels a little digital, it feels a little point-and-shoot camera-y still. You can see that's sort of their roots. But, as soon as you put it into post, the Sony file actually seems to have a little bit more dynamic range, and I found it a little bit easier to edit and to be able to do a bit more with those files. So I would say it's basically a wash. If you're someone who doesn't want to edit and just wants to get everything right in camera and then have that be the photo, the Leica is probably a better choice if cost is no object. However, if you're like me and you're kind of a perfectionist and you're going to edit whatever comes out of the camera and cost is an object, Sony might be the better choice. In terms of video, I would say that overall, the Sony is a little bit better. I actually liked the image coming out of the Sony better. It's sort of ironic that, whatever they're doing to tune it in video makes it look better, and I don't quite understand why they don't do that to photo. But maybe there's something there where, the video looking that good makes the photos look a little more digital. I don't know enough about that. And if you know about it, please put a comment below and explain this to me. Whereas I do like the Leica photos coming out of the camera much better for photography, but then in video, it's like almost a little too clinical and sharp, and then washed out also, interestingly. Of course, if you shoot in log, the color science matters less, but just straight out of camera, run and gun kind of a thing, I wanted to test that. I think both log profiles are fine. I don't do a ton of color grading in video, because most of the video I shoot is either this, or like a corporate headshot type thing, so I don't need super, cinematic colors and that kind of a thing. But they both have log. Both logs are fine. So, for video, autofocus in the Sony is bang on, whereas the SL3 is a complete mess in terms of video autofocus, deeply in need of a firmware update. So for video, the Sony camera is the clear winner. Similarly, if you're going to shoot a bunch of video and you need to do that now, the Sony is also probably a winner for video. A commenter asked me to check out the stabilization of both the Sony and the Leica. And just for funsies, I threw in the Panasonic S5 IIX, which I'm filming on. And that sort of came out pretty much the way I thought it was going to. Basically, neither the Sony nor the Leica has great image stabilization for video. Both work fine for photo. I would say the Leica's was a little bit better, but then when it misses, it's pretty jarring. Whereas, like, the Sony's is just kind of like nervous and jittery all the time. By way of comparison, as you'll see in the footage I've put up here, the Panasonic almost looks like it's on a gimbal. You can tell Panasonic invented image stabilization for video. So if image stabilization is an important thing for you, I would say probably neither of those cameras is right for you, and you should take a long, hard look at the S5 IIX. That is by far the best video image stabilization on the market. So going to the Leica engineer's other point about user experience, there's definitely something to that. In a nutshell, the SL3 has a far superior user experience. When you go to look for something, it's generally in a place that makes sense and you would have looked for it, and it's labeled correctly so you can understand what it is that you're clicking on in the menu. Whereas the Sony, it's just a mess. The menu's a mess. The titles for the items in the menu don't make any sense. It's like from a different planet. It's really pretty terrible. For example, with the Sony, you can't change the distance scale to feet. You can only shoot the distance scale in meters. I'm American. I don't know what meters mean. I don't want to have to figure that out. Also, like, there's no option to have the level across every screen. You have to go to a special screen on the Sony to get the level for photography. That makes no sense. And then in video, it's like, even though it's a very video-forward camera, it's missing some basic video features that you get on like the S5 II, which is like a $2,000 less camera. Like, I don't think there's any waveforms in this thing. So, if user experience is what you're all about, and you want this kind of a DSLR, traditional full frame, working man's camera, and cost is no object, SL3 is the way to go. A corollary to user experience is utility. In terms of utility, I think the SL3 is still a little hobbled. It's a little bit slow. The fast shooting frame rates, the drive mode is still a little slow. The focus is a little slower than the Sony. The tilt screen isn't nearly as useful as Sony's amazing 5-way tilt up, tilt out, tilt whatever way you want screen. So, if you're just needing to bang out photos, the SL3 is probably not the right choice. It still is kind of a Leica camera and forces you to go a little bit slower, take your time, think about what you're doing. Whereas the Sony is like a rocket ship. You just bang, 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 bang. So, if it's a fast production, a high volume commercial environment, probably the Sony. If it's a more artistic, we're thinking about it, I want to really put thought into each image and I have the time to work around the utility limitations of the SL3, then maybe the SL3 is the camera to go for. Another thing I wanted to mention about the SL3 in terms of user experience and utility is the screens. On the SL2, they were like the best of the best, right? But now on the SL3, they're kind of similar to the SL2, and I feel like the Sony screens actually are better. Like, even the back screen was better in like a sunny day. I think that there's like something shiny on the coating of the SL3 camera that made it a little even harder to see. And the viewfinder is just better in the Sony. Like, it's tuned better, the SL3. Like, the colors are better, and the rendition, maybe the quality of glass is better, but just the resolution and performance of the Sony viewfinder and screen, I found to be better, which I was surprised at. So my first impressions video kind of said it all, but I'll add some nuance to this. In terms of just pure image quality, these cameras are very similar, and with a little tweaking, you can make them look basically identical. Here's a couple examples of that. You'll see, I feel like the Leica has a little more tonality in the image, but the Sony was like much easier to make, and it was much easier to get creative shots because I could move the screen around and get weird angles. So again, just kind of like a wash in terms of image quality. Another user asked me to look into Leica glass versus G Master glass. And, unfortunately, I didn't have those lenses here to test this. And it would be kind of an expensive proposition to test that because, just renting one Leica lens is basically the same cost as renting a Sony and 2 lenses, maybe even 3. So I just don't really want to spend that money because I kind of already know what the outcome is going to be. The Leica glass is just much, much better. It is near medium format quality in terms of just like crispness, sharpness of the image, the fall off, all these things, okay? So if you're needing that level of image quality out of a full frame camera, Leica is the way to go. However, if you're like me, where I'm at right now, I can't really afford the SL3 and like 3 or 4 Apo SL lenses. It's just too expensive of a proposition for a full frame system. If it was a medium format system, different story, or something larger that is going to give me markedly different results, then, maybe that money is worth it. But that 5 or 10% clearly better image quality bump that you get from the SL Apo lenses, I mean, it's there. And it's like a maybe 50-50% that like it would actually make a difference, and maybe like an 80-20 that a client wouldn't even notice the difference. Okay. And you can get nearly good results from the Sony, whether it's Sigma glass or G Master glass, or an SL3 with Sigma or like Lumix glass on it. The extra money for me isn't worth it. And that's got me kind of questioning the SL3 system overall. I think, kind of the things I've been saying about the SL3 in various videos are true. If you just kind of wanted one camera system and you didn't need the ease of editing of medium format files, and you don't need that 16-bit color necessarily, and you just sort of want one system that does really nice image quality, and you don't want to deal with all the other stuff that goes with Sony, Canon, Nikon, Fuji, the SL3 might be a really good sweet spot for you. And you don't need super fast shooting. The SL3 might be a really good sweet spot for you. However, for me, being here in Austin, more and more needing to do commercial stuff, I think that the SL3 might be too expensive of a proposition for me. If someone wants to donate some Apo lenses or let me borrow some Apo lenses, I'll definitely test it. But that's kind of where I'm at right now, is that indeed, full frame quality has gotten so good that I do question, whether I need that bump from the Apo or if I am better off going up to medium format. If you've watched my videos, you can definitely see I've been checking out medium format cameras. So I may need to sort of retract some of the things I said in some previous videos, because more and more I'm leaning towards the Fujifilm GFX line, especially with that $5,000 body they just came out with. Don't love the look and ergonomics of it, but it's $5,000. That's actually quite a bit cheaper than the SL3, and in the ballpark of the a7R5 when it's not on sale, which it is right now. Got a little rambly here. Basically, my initial conclusions were correct in that preview video. Very similar image quality. SL3 wins on user experience. If you're a shooter that's video forward or very truly hybrid and need to bang out photos, the Sony's probably the better camera for you. If you're more of a photography forward person, or you just want the best possible user experience, the SL3 is the camera for you. If you're somewhere in the middle, stay tuned. I've got more thoughts on that, but that doesn't really, these two cameras aren't really the answer, I think, for that. I think in that case, it becomes a budget thing if we're only talking about these two cameras. If you've got the budget, the SL3, probably the way to go. Firmware updates will fix a lot of the video issues and maybe some of the user experience, utility issues that we've talked about. But, if budget is an option, the Sony a7R5 is a darn good camera, even if it's a little painful to use. So the Sony a7R5 rental is going back to lens rentals today. But, maybe I'm going to rent it again. This has made me more curious about what's going on with Canon. I don't really love the Nikon color science, and I'm sure you see my videos about the ZF. If it had a joystick and a couple of other little features, I would go back to it. I'd try it again. But those missing features were just enough that I'm not really that interested in Nikon, even though they've done a great job making a retro camera and catching up with video features. It wasn't quite enough. My interest in Nikon is in that next generation. If they invest in the retro camera, come out with a ZF2 with a joystick and a few other little features, make some retro lenses, then we're going to talk. But until then, I'm kind of done trying Nikon for now. But, I am more and more interested in Canon. I really don't like their menu systems. I don't like the way their cameras feel. But I think their color science is better than Sony's color science. I think their lenses are the same quality, maybe a little bit less good than the G Masters, and then there's no third-party support. So that part is less interesting to me. But, if they come out with a Canon R5 II in the next week or two with that 61 megapixel sensor, if it's stacked, or they've got a stacked 45 megapixel sensor, I don't know. That would make me want to do another rental, maybe rent both the Sony and the Canon, compare it against the SL3. Because, if image quality is all the same and you get really good color science, then that makes the Canon a really compelling option, especially because the video is probably going to be better than the video in the SL3 and as good or about as good as the Sony a7R5. So that's got me sort of interested. But in the meantime, I'm going to kind of go in a different direction. And that's what my next video will be about, or like one of my next videos. I have no schedule on these things. So, stay tuned, like, comment, subscribe. Give me all your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.